2024 was the year that transformed long course triathlon. There were more opportunities to race at the highest level than ever before, and at the start of the season, there wasn't a question if athletes would be racing more, the question was by how much. And in this video, I'm going to answer that exact question, but before we can dive into the numbers, it's important to understand why. In 2024, we saw the launch of two new professional triathlon series, the T100 Triathlon World Tour and the Ironman Pro Series. Now, even though you didn't need to race more than 5 times in either of the series to maximize your points, we saw loads of contracted T100 athletes racing in the Ironman Pro Series, whether it was Paula Findlay racing several 70.3s or Kat Matthews challenging at the top of both series. Then we had short course athletes racing in the Ironman Pro Series and the T100 series, like Yella Gaines and Taylor Knibb. With big money on the line in both series, there was a huge incentive to race more than ever. And with the combined series running from March to December, many athletes had their longest seasons ever and were able to squeeze in even more races. So in this video, I'm going to reveal who raced the most in 2024, who had the biggest increase of racing, and answer that question of how much more professional triathletes raced in 2024. Okay, before we actually get stuck into the numbers and I give you all of those stats, I thought it was important to run through how I've actually put this together because it was far from perfect. There are a few assumptions in there, and I know triathletes love detail. So I thought I'd put together some trusty FAQs to let you know how it's all been put together and what data there is. So number one, which athletes are we looking at? So I've taken the top 50 men and women from the PTO website. So it's the PTO World Rankings. I'm focusing on long course triathlon because the two series have been launched in the long course world. And number two, why the top 50? Really, I didn't have the time to put together the top 100 of men and women, so I had to do the top 50. That adds together to B100, which is a nice round number for percentages. But if I had to think of a real reason why, I think focusing on the top 50 of each, generally those will be the athletes that have more of the financial freedom to do the races they want, meaning they can race as much or as little as they want. The financial impact isn't a limiter on how much they want to race, which it might be for athletes lower in the rankings. Number three, where does the information come from? Now, I've already mentioned it's the PTO World Rankings, and I've used the PTO website for the majority of race information. Now, there are a few short course athletes ranked in the top 50, whether it's Yella Gaines, Taylor Knibb, Taylor Spivey, and to have an equal comparison with 2024 and 2023, the year we're comparing against, Taylor Spivey didn't race any long course races in 2023. So for it to be a fair comparison, I'm including the world triathlon races she did in 2024 and 2023. And that's the same for all the short course athletes that are currently ranked in the top 50. And I'm only including the individual triathlon races. I'm not including any mixed relays. And at number 4, I can hear you all at home thinking this, but Sam, the PTO website doesn't have every single long course triathlon race on it. And I know it's annoying, but I've had to go through manually and add in races like St. Anthony's, Noosa Triathlon, Escape from Alcatraz last year, Challenge Beijing. So there are a few races that I've had to add in and see which athletes have done it, which has made it a bit of a manual process and maybe isn't the perfect solution, because if an athlete's done a race that I don't know of, I won't have been able to add it in. And the other thing to be aware of with the PTO website, sometimes if athletes are disqualified, they won't appear and it won't show as a race that they've done. So for example, Kat Matthews was disqualified in Hamburg. That doesn't show on her PTO profile page as a race she did. So I've had to add that in separately. And the last one, number 5, what about injuries? So athletes that have been injured throughout the year will have raced less, or if they were injured last year and didn't race at all, I think it's too subjective to make any adjustments for that. So I haven't made any adjustments for injuries. So for example, Flora Duffy didn't race at all in 2023 and then raced 6 times in 2024. That will show as an increase. I think it's too difficult to adjust it. But then you've also had athletes like Trevor Foley who raced a lot in 2023, but then only raced 5 times in 2024. So I'm sort of assuming that they're ups and downs and they'll offset each other, but that is something to be aware of. Now that's all the FAQs I had. If you have any more questions, feel free to drop a comment down below and I'll get back to you, or just drop me a message on Instagram and I'll let you know all the information you want to know. Now, finally, we can get stuck into the detail. Let's go. Right, I've got to sit down for this section. It's getting serious. It's time to run through all those stats I've mentioned. Starting off with who raced the most in 2024. And if you follow the sport closely, you should know who this is. She started racing down under back in January and raced 8 times over the first half of the year. And then, despite getting injured at the Ironman World Championships in Nice, she raced another 8 times over the back half of the year. 16 races in a season is crazy. That's right, it's Els Visser. I still can't get my head around 16 races in a single season. The only month she didn't race in was October, and that's when she was rehabbing off the back of the injury from the Ironman World Championships in Nice. She raced 12 times in 2023, so she raced 33% more in 2024. That's pretty crazy. The men's side wasn't quite as impressive, with Sam Long and Peter Hemrick racing 11 times each, although Peter Hemrick did DNF 5 of his races. Sam Long is known for his heavy race schedule. He also raced 11 times in 2023 and 12 times in 2022, so no year-on-year increase, but his 11 races that he did in 24 will definitely have been more competitive than the 11 he did in 2023. And that will be the same for many athletes. Even if they haven't raced more, the likelihood is the races they've done have been at a much higher level than the races they did in 2023. Now, even though Sam Long didn't increase the number of races he did in 2024, there were lots of athletes that did. On the women's side, Marta Sanchez went from racing 7 times to 13 times in 2024. That is a huge increase. She had a huge breakthrough year. She'd never won an Ironman branded event before, but she won 2 70.3s, 2 Ironmans, and finished 6th at the Ironman World Championships in Nice. Now, I thought she would be a bit of a dark horse for the Ironman Pro Series in 2025, but it's just been announced she has taken a T100 contract, so it'll be interesting to see how she gets on in that series. On the men's side, Christian Hogenhaug and Max Spurl both increased the amount they raced by an additional 4 races. However, in 2023, they both only raced 4 times, taking their total to 8. So it's nowhere near the amount of races Marta Sanchez or Els Visser were doing in 2024. Now, to finally answer that question, how much more did professional triathletes race in 2024? So as I said at the start, I looked at the top 50 men and women in the PTO World Rankings, and that's 100 athletes. So of those 100 athletes I looked at, 54 raced more in 2024 versus 2023. 16 raced the exact same as they did in 2023, and 30 athletes raced less in 2024 than they did in 2023. And you can see the split is broadly equal across men and women. Those 100 athletes raced a total of 772 times in 2024, and that works out to be a 10% increase versus 2023, with men racing 8% more and women 12% more. So a 10% increase on average, that works out less than 1 extra race per athlete. And we've seen a lot of athletes race more than they did in 2023, but there were some athletes who didn't race as much, which definitely brings that number down. Now, the interesting thing is, if we go from looking at the top 50 down to the top 20, that 10% increase increases to 19%, with women racing 26% more and men 12% more. Now you can see a big proportion of that is driven by the increase in women's racing, with the athletes like Marta Sanchez, Els Visser, Kat Matthews, Flora Duffy all in the top 20, and they all raced significantly more in 2024 than they did in 2023. Now, this is not a perfect science. Making the sample size smaller will just mean anomalies have a bigger impact. And I did mention Flora Duffy didn't race at all in 2023, did race in 2024. So that will skew the numbers slightly, but I still think it's an interesting snapshot. Let me know what you think. So 2024 did see a big increase in racing, with the majority of athletes racing more than they did in 2023, but there were still those 30 athletes that raced less. So that 10% on average increase, is it more or less than you'd have expected? I think before I put this together, I thought it would be a bigger number, but thinking about it, what this analysis misses is the competitive side of things. Athletes are racing more, but they're also racing at a higher level all the time in the T100 series and the Ironman Pro series. And finally, will it stay at this level? We've seen a 10% increase from 2023 to 2024, and nearly a 20% increase if you're just looking at that top 20 Is it sustainable to keep increasing the amount of racing, and will we see it happen? We've already seen some athletes like Kat Matthews, Magnus Ditlev turn down T100 contracts to focus on the Ironman Pro Series. And then we've seen athletes like Sam Laidlow saying they're not going to do either of the series and have their season built around winning the Ironman World Championships. So I think in 2025, we could see athletes racing less than they did in 2024 as they figure out purely what they want to focus on. Is it one series? Is it one World Championship race? I don't think we'll see athletes continuing to race more than they did in 2024. And that brings an end to the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this and you haven't already, make sure you subscribe down below. This is the first video of 2025, and I'm looking forward to bringing you more race analysis, previews, and I'm going to try and get out and speak to more athletes over the season. So make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.